Hi and welcome to Hey Coach. This week we have the famous Reid from New Zealand. So we've got an Olympic rower who made it into the 1984 Olympics. Single sculls, is that correct?
Single scull, yeah.
So I'd like to welcome Gary. He's from Wakatani in New Zealand, and as the things work, I'm big on this quantum and laws of attraction. Took a phone call only a week ago, and here he is actually coming out to have a holiday a week later, and I get the opportunity to sit down with him and part on his ways of what he got through rowing and getting to the Olympics, and also going into his business, which we'll go into a little bit further to give you a better understanding of, and I'd like to impart his philosophies, principles, his ideas, and that will help our sports stars and coaches to get the most out of it. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
Welcome to the couch as it is. Now, obviously, coming to the Olympics, you went to the World Champs in '85. What are the things that drove you to, I suppose, rowing? Why rowing, and what got you to the Olympics? What do you feel now that you look back at your past, which is most of us will look back and say, well, these are things that we could have done. What do you think at the time you were doing that set you apart from the others?
Well, mine was pretty simple, is that I had a father that was engrossed in rowing, and so from an early age he was always at the rowing club.
Yeah.
So for me it was a natural progression to go to the rowing club, as we had to as kids anyway. And then the love of rowing just sort of grew from there. But I think, I don't know, distant psychology of it, maybe that the only way that I was going to see my dad was to go to the club. and it sort of just extended from there. So when I was like 12 years old, I got thrown in a boat to fill an extra seat at the opening ceremony that we had every year at the club on the river. And we ended up winning it.
Great.
And so it sort of, I don't know, just went from there really.
Cool. And now, obviously you build it out. It's interesting you mentioned about getting time to spend with your dad, because we're sort of, our areas now are a little bit different with our parents working, and then the social side of things brings it there. With making the Olympics, like, was your rowing at Wakatani, or did you have to travel to go to the club, or was there particular clubs that you were with over your time?
Well, no, I was with the same club, but the beautiful thing about it was we were surrounded by very successful rowers. Like in the 1960s, my dad sort of went to Europe and raced and did really poorly. So the knowledge that he got out of that was he brought it back and said to these young guys at the club, he said, I believe that we should change the way we're doing things, and with that, I think that some of you guys can go to the Olympics. And they laughed at him. And yet, two of the 8 guys that they started with ended up Olympic champions. So he brought that back into the to the club, and it was a great thing, really.
You bring up a great point there with something that I've really looked at, and you see a lot of coaches and a lot of successful people. They look at what other people or other successful sports are, or coaches or players have been doing, and then try and bring it back. And it was interesting you mentioned that the amount of people that laughed at him in regards to process, but usually the laughing comes from fear of the unknown. But the other side is that the only way we can grow as sports stars or business people is we've got to learn from people who are already doing it. So your dad over there, yes, he may not have won, or he didn't go compete at the level that he wanted, but the learnings he got out of that, he's brought back, which imparts onto yourself. And you said one of the other guy out of the 8, which is great statistics when you look at it, 2 out of 8 that have gone on to the Olympics. They're the sort of thing. So were some of those principles, or was it just training techniques that he sort of imparted to you guys?
No, a lot of it was they just upped the ante on the amount of work that they were doing. Yeah. And the technique side of it, it was a different animal, but really it was that they just had to do more work. Yeah. And they just realised that they were devoid of actually what they were doing, and so these guys from 19 and 20-year-olds, within 4 years they were New Zealand champions, and then they went on to be Olympic champions. So, but what you were saying is brilliant. Is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. There's very successful people out there. Yeah. And the idea is that you've got to surround yourself with successful people, and that was one of the great things that I had with these guys in the club that we're already in. I didn't need to go anywhere else. Yeah. And so when I left school, all I wanted to do was stay in Whakatane, because we had a river that we could train on. I had my dad to coach me, and at the time he'd already been to 2 Olympic Games as a coach, because he'd gone on as well. And not only that, we had Olympians still in the club. So we had all to do well, you need to surround yourself with the right people.
Definitely.
And you've got to surround yourself with a team. And the big part of my team was my dad, but also having the influence of these other guys in the club with us.
And it's probably, you made me to think about a point there, having the right people around you. And I suppose the way we also look at it is some of the players, and I know from myself, we have a lot of peer pressures and so forth that in some cases, as we're learning from one of our coaches, Kerwin, is about our herd, and some of the herd may have, and which when you look at it, the guys that laughed at your dad in regards to changing the regime, I suppose they got egg on their face now because of what they've produced at the same time. How would you go with it with players or sports stars or rowers that are going into it that are in an area that there seems to be not as positive? What would you recommend as probably 1 or 2 steps they could do to go from mixing with it or finding out how they can go to those next levels?
Well, as you said, you've got to find the right herd, and without that, it makes it so much harder. But also, it's the herd, the environment, but you see most of the successful people in the world, they mix with successful people.
Exactly, yeah.
And I don't think, I just think that's one of the biggest recipes for success. So if you're in a very rural town or a place that, in the middle of a city, for example, especially with rowing, to go rowing is really difficult. Like in New Zealand, they've based the high performance centre at Lake Karapiro, which is 2 hours out of Auckland. I mean, if they wanted to have a population base, Auckland would be the ideal place, but the water there is tidal, it's mud flats at low tide, it's a nightmare to row. Whereas at Karapiro, you can go down there and you can have, you can row 20 kilometres in one way and turn around and come home again. It's on a lake, and it's purpose built. So in effect, the environment is a huge part of the game as well. So successful people and also the environment you're going to play in as well.
And with I suppose any fundamentals and principles that you learned from your dad and from the experienced coaches around you that you use today that's taken you into your business, which is with Concept2, which we'll go into a little bit later, but do you have any fundamentals or principles that you have taken out of sport, out of your rowing, to the Olympics that's now in your life today?
Probably the biggest thing is to learn your trade. As I say, you stick to your knitting. But also the thing is that is to learn your product, or you've got to be passionate about it, obviously, to have, and the passion, you can't substitute that either. So with me, with rowing, going into a rowing type business, it's been brilliant. In fact, but then the funny part about that is the rowing side of it is actually a smaller piece of our business because it's so much wider. Because we deal with a lot more of the fitness industry now than we actually deal with rowing, because we've got such a successful product. But the big thing is to know your product and to know what you're getting in, and be passionate about it, really.
And like for our up and coming sports stars, and we got a number in our the viewers and so forth will be school kids. What sort of principles could they be utilising? And I understand you knowing your sport, and that's probably one of the key principles I've written in a book in regards to 7 principles of a great coach, is having knowledge of your sport, which goes back to having an understanding of what you're actually doing and breaking it down into principles. What about for our kids that are coming through? What sort of things can they be looking at and understanding to sort of start those principles or fundamentals that they can? I know one of them is discipline, but it's understanding the disciplines.
Well, the biggest thing I think is to be coachable. You've got to be open enough to be coached, not just by it's all very well having a mentor, but you've got to be able to look sort of in a bigger picture. So therefore, you can take pieces of a lot of different people and put them all together to make a. But the big thing is being coachable and open to be coaching. To be coachable, because so many people are closed off and therefore they don't, they only limit themselves to how much they can actually learn, and the learning process never stops. So the biggest thing so I think being coachable, is the number one thing.
Yeah.
And to take the time to learn the technique. A lot of people want to just win. Yeah. It's like if you want to be rich. A lot of people just say, I want to be rich, but they've got to learn the skills to be rich. Otherwise, they lose their money.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as with any sport, is that you've got to learn the techniques that go with it to make it a lot more sustainable and to give you a lot more life in the game as well. So big thing is to spend the time and to learn all the small things that go together with putting a good technique together, regardless of what sport it is.
You punched right on the nail, I reckon, with getting it was basically the fundamentals, the basics. In my learning, and especially in the last probably 5 years of really researching great coaches, John Wooden comes to mind, Alex Ferguson from Man United, Wayne Bennett over here, Craig Bellamy, Rick Charlesworth. One of the things I've been looking at over there is also just doing the basic and fundamentals, which I've actually, as a coach in rugby league, they're probably the biggest things I've actually focused on. I've gone away from the key plays and all this sort of stuff, is working on really the basics and the fundamentals, which you've just touched on then. It's just getting the basic fundamentals first, and then, as I said, learning from others, because I know from my experience that I learned from different coaches to perfect my game as I went along. And as you're sort of talking there, you've obviously, to get the Olympics, it was not just your dad, there would have been other coaches and other people that you took advice from, which made you more coachable, which allowed you to grow and go further on that. Would it be correct in saying?
Yeah, definitely. But the other thing is that you become a lot more objective with what stuff, the information that you do get, to what suits you and what doesn't suit you. So not only do you get good stuff from other people, you can also, you can work out what you don't want or what doesn't suit you.
Yeah.
But my dad always said to me is that if you learn how to row well, then you've got a chance of going fast. Now, if you can go fast, then you've got a chance of winning. Whereas, a lot of people just want to go winning. We just want to be a winner. But there are steps along the way, and because the thing is, to be a sportsman, as you know, you've got to have a whole lot of attributes.
Yeah.
So by going fast, a lot of people can go fast, but then they don't have the mental game to be able to put it together when it's required.
Yep.
So, and the top 6 inches are the most important 6 inches when it really comes down to it, especially at high level competition. So the top 6 inches meaning of the brain, of the head.
As I said, between the ears.
So you can have the best body in the world, you can have the best technique in the world, but if you haven't got the brain to go with it, or you're limited as well. But generally, if your technique is good and and then you can develop all that other stuff along the way. And some people, the other thing is that to be mindful of what your limitations are as an athlete. Yeah. Meaning, like for example, I know, with my fast twitch fibres are just about non-existent. So for me to be a sprinter or a runner, I got no shit. Whereas, rowing suited me because I could go and row for 20 k's and I can chug along like a V8 diesel engine. But to crank it up, we only have to do 6 minutes. But and for whatever reason, it suited me quite well. But some guys, are amazing with the 10 seconds. They got 10 seconds of good stuff in them, and not much else.
Yeah, well, Usain Bolt, he can go over basically 200, best in the world.
Yeah. 400. He's
different kettle of fish.
Yeah, exactly. So. And also being, you've got to be mindful that you're playing a sport that actually does suit your body type, but then to also have the right. I mean, for all these things to fall into place, it's quantum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because how do you get all these different attributes all to line up? For the fact is that you can put a performance together, to go and play high level sport. But the big thing is, I think, is we've got to be mindful that. Is that we are, like for example with me, I never set out to be an Olympic champion.
Yep.
I went rowing because my dad was rowing. The fact that I got to the Olympics was amazing, and the experience was very good, and it was amazing. But the thing is, that wasn't part of my plan. And you see some people, so I never ever thought of myself as an Olympic champion. Maybe that's why I never got to that. But it's all very well making the Olympics, but to actually be a champion is another whole tier again.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I was always very mindful of that. That I don't know whether I didn't have it to be a champion, but my aspirations to be a champion, it was more the fact is that I wanted to be in the game.
Yeah.
And I was in the game, and I can live happily with the factors or sleep well at night, knowing that I played the game to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And so, but I wasn't shredded because I wasn't an Olympic champion as far as my rowing aspirations went.
Which sort of brings down to, especially with today, you look at a lot of our sports stars, coaches, teams, clubs and so forth. There's so much pressure on success today, especially when there's more money involved in our sports. What are the from your experience, what pressures and how did you overcome pressures to allow you to go into the Olympics? Because one of the learnings and research I've done is pressure is the key, and understanding and learning to, I suppose, overcome and have the resilience to actually move through to get to that next level. Because the difference between you and the next one are on the same par, and as I said, it's only the 6 inches, which is basically between the ears. From your experience, what sort of ways did you learn to deal with pressure to get you through certain areas or trainings or competitions that allowed you, when you look back, sort of go, okay, well that was the fundamental, the principle that allowed me to move forward?
It's a hard one because the thing is that we didn't sort of see it. I mean, I don't know whether I recognised it as actually pressure, other than the fact. Well, I know when I went to the Olympics, the town raised the money for me to go to Europe to race, to qualify. So they'd raised, like a little town of Whakatane, which was probably 12,000 people, raised $16,000 in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks for Dad and I to go.
Yeah.
So there was a pressure of the fact that these guys had faith in the fact, well, they were putting their faith in me that, to give me this opportunity. The thing with most athletes is that the pressure they put on themselves is far greater than anything externally can happen.
Yeah.
So the pressure that we put on ourselves to perform or to do the best to our ability, I think is far stronger than anything external anyway.
Yeah.
But then the other side of the coin is that I never really saw it, because it was such we were trained to race. It's a wee bit like if you're a Marine, you're trained to go to war.
Yeah.
You're trained to go into a war zone or into a fight zone, and we were trained to go rowing. So the fact that we were doing what we were doing was amazing. So therefore, it didn't seem to be like a pressure situation. But we also, but then the other side of the coin is that the feelings and the anxiety and all this stuff that we were experiencing, I think also channeled us to excel, or to try to put a better performance together than we may have if we were just going to the New Zealand champs, or if we were going to the local competition down the road. So it's a hard one, and it's how you interpret what pressure is, I suppose.
Yeah, and it was an area that I've sort of touched on with the tips. One of my videos is one of the areas that sort of key points is it's usually poor focus and also their execution. And when I sort of mention that, is like people coming into it is like, in let's say particularly we use rowing as the example here, is that you've got the different competitors that will, it comes down to some sacrifices, someone that'll go out on the night before and do something that just is out of their norm, which then when they come back will put more pressure on, because they obviously haven't prepared that the right way. As you mentioned, your preparation was very well because you'd done all the fundamentals you needed to. It's I suppose the areas I look at as well with educating the kids and coaches, it's the turning up and doing all the basics. So if you're continually doing all the basics in the rowing, the pressure won't come because you've done everything you can do. It's when the ones that we know that they know they've got the ability, but they're not doing all the fundamentals day in, day out all the way through.
Sure. And the thing is not to focus on the result. The result happens as a part of the process. So if your process is solid and you've prepared well, and the result that you get is just part and parcel of the preparation. So you prep right and you focus on your preparation. And the focus is on the preparation. The result will take care of itself. It's a result. The result just comes in fact, one of the most famous guys at New Zealand Rowing, he's just died recently, a guy called Dudley Story. He sat in New Zealand 8 down in 1982, and he was the manager. And so you got 4 guys on each side of the table, and he said, I want you to look across the table, and he said, I want you to make a promise to that guy on the other side of the table, you're not going to let him down tomorrow. These guys are going out to row the World Champ final. They were in Lucerne in Switzerland. And he said, I want you to make a promise to that guy across the table that you're not going to let him down tomorrow. They went out and won the Worlds. And every one of those guys said that was the most inspirational thing that anybody had ever told them. Because it took the onus off themselves to not let, so you're not going to let yourself down, but you're not going to let your mate across the table down, and the other 7 guys. And that was all the boys identified with being a very powerful thing.
It's another great point where we talk about with our businesses and that as well, is I take that as from Doug's sort of information and say, think about the other person, is adding value to someone else's life. So by you or by them rowing for the other person, it takes the onus off them. So there's another way of taking the pressure away, because you're actually helping somebody else achieve what they want.
Totally.
And it works in reverse. So it comes back to adding more value to other people's lives. So with what we've got out of it is, what are the lessons that you've learnt, and probably 2 pieces of advice that you could give to our coaches and sports stars coming through from your career that allows them to go, they'd be the best 2 parts. And I know your dad gave you a fair bit. Is there 1 or 2 specific ones that stand out to your mind that you can part with?
Well, probably the biggest thing I think is that you can't buy a game. You know what I mean?
All the money in the world, yes.
You know what I mean? And so, and there's so many kids I see being flogged into doing something they don't want to be doing.
Yeah.
And really, a kid finds, as an individual, you find your own sport, or it comes to find you.
Yeah.
But so many parents saying, look, I want my little Johnny to be a tennis player. It's not like that. And you see so many of the great sportsmen, like Pete Sampras. I don't think his parents played tennis.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know about Roger Federer, but his parents don't look like they're tennis players. I've seen them in the stands. But I don't know. It's you find, so let the individual find the sport. If they're going to be, and the only way that they're going to excel is if they find something that they want to do.
Finding that passion.
That passion. You can't buy the passion, and you certainly can't buy the game. Doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. At one stage, Canadian rowing was spending more per head on their athletes than anybody else in the world, and their results never showed it.
Yeah.
The UK, and for the London Olympics, the UK, well actually I'll talk about New Zealand first, we spent $18 million getting our rowing team for 4 years going to the London Olympics. From Beijing to London, we spent $18 million on our rowing team. The UK alone, they spent $55 million US just in 2012.
Really?
And okay, they were the highest performing nation in rowing at the Olympics, but we were second best. So, there was a disparity there. But the big thing is that when it comes down to it, well, this day and age, it's you've got to have a team around you, which is going to cost money.
Yep.
But without the passion and without the desire, you're flogging a dead horse.
And it goes all across with the business, sport and life. If you don't have that, then you're basically you're scratching at straws.
That's right. And find the passion. The passion is what drives, and the passion is what makes you do the extra. and it's the guys that it's the guys that do the extra. And you know, like, I mean, to be a world champion, you know, it might take that much, you know, that much training. But to be an Olympic champion, you know, that 4 years, you know, it could take another, you know, 50% effort. You know what I mean?
I do, and that's the things we've talked about, is it's doing, and you probably, one of the points I've taken out of that is that doing the extras, which is doing things when other people aren't watching. They're the ones that you look at it. In all the sports, all your top athletes are doing the extras that no one else is prepared to do.
Totally.
So showing up to everything, whether it's raining, hailing, snowing, they're finding ways to still get through what they need to do to go, because they know what their end result is they're looking for, what their outcome, and what sort of person they want to be. And that's where the passion comes from with the sport itself.
Totally, yeah. And like, I read an interesting piece about the All Blacks and about the culture that they've which, you know, obviously, you know, you'll identify with well, you know, with being in big teams, you know, with, you know, NRL and the size of the team. But the All Blacks said that after a big match, after a test match, they said that nobody cleans our training, you know, the training rooms are all cleaned by the boys, because they said, you know, we take care of ourselves, we don't need anybody else to take care of us. And,
I remember hearing that.
And that culture is a big thing to develop. And so if you're a coach developing a team, the culture is the most important thing, as we've learned, you know, with this whole Kerwin Ray thing, you know, being involved in business. And you know, if you're putting a team in business together, it's the same as putting a team together to play footy or whatever. And you've got to have a culture, and that culture is what everybody has to buy into, and that's what you can excel from. You've got something to fall back on, and when things don't quite go your way, the culture holds you together. It's like glue. You know what I mean?
And with that culture, you talked about your there with the All Blacks, and then I'm sort of picturing the same thing would have happened in your club, in the rowing club, for 2 out of the 8 to go on to the Olympics. And culture is probably one of the key areas that I'm noticing in businesses and sport. If you don't have that right culture in place, it just sets that unprecedented failures that seem to keep popping up. There's always those blocks that keep stopping the sport or the business to go to that next level, and it all comes down to the culture, because everyone's not on the same page. And being involved with rugby league a fair bit, I see it with a number of clubs. You see especially when it comes to the money, it seems to be a lot more imparted. Reading Alex Ferguson's book, he talked about the same thing, that Man United, they have the kids coming through and cleaning the sheds, and especially the first team sheds and their gear and that, so they get an understanding of what they're actually trying to achieve at the same time. And there's also making sure that they're doing the fundamentals, the basics, you know, looking after doing the basics, which, you know, for the kids at home, clean up your room and stuff like that. I know it's not, you don't think it's a big deal, but they're the little things that you're doing that make the difference. You know, by cleaning up your room, it shows that you're looking after respecting yourself and showing where you need to do it. Same with the coaches, cleaning up the change rooms. You know, I watched, they were talking about Jonathan Thurston in the NRL, with him going around picking up all the stuff. He was out injured, but he was going around picking all the stuff. And it's the type of person he is. Like, he hands the goal kicking tee to the ball boy every time, then he hands his headgear away to a fan in the stands after every game. He's giving value back because he knows what those people have sacrificed and to come and watch him provide the value and experience he has.
Totally.
And the All Blacks are the same thing.
You know, very much so. Like, I was on the banks of Karapiro one day at home, and a lady came. I was just talking to a lady, and her son was rowing. He just started. Well, he'd been rowing for a few months, and anyway, she was singing the praises, singing his praises, the coach's praises, because the coach had said to this kid, and he'd only just started rowing, if you want to be on my team, he said, you've got to do all the little things right. He said, I want your homework done. He said, I want your room clean. And this woman was just saying, it's like someone's given my kid a personality. You know, like, he's just given him this whole different personality. She said he's amazing. He's got time management. He's even more polite. He's more into the family. And this was one of the coach installed this in these guys right from the word go, just to do that little bit extra that everybody else. Yep. And this guy actually is now the head rowing coach now in Australia. He just got since the Olympics. He's now over here, and I don't doubt that Australian rowing is going to be way better for it.
Yeah, and there's one I talked about, and I've been listening to a fair bit with different mentors, if you can say mentors and coaches out there, but the key that I've taken out of all of it, and what you've just mentioned there again, it's self-preparation. It's doing all the things yourself that you can do, that you've got control over, and then the rest of everything else will then come in the flow of it, because you're actually doing the things that are going to set you up for success.
Totally. And it's all those little there's just those little extra things that just set you apart from everybody else. That's what you want. Someone to be exceptional, you've got to do something different.
Yep.
To what most people are doing. And so like, it's the same thing. Even when I was a kid with rowing, guys would be ringing me up on a Friday night saying, "Hey, we're at this party." I'm going, "Oh yeah, really good." And they said, "Oh, so how long are you going to be before you get here?" And I said, "Oh, look, I'll be there soon." And I'd roll over on the couch, go back to sleep.
Okay, yeah.
Because I would. The next morning I'm up at 8. We're up at 6 o'clock to go training. Well, there's no way I'm going to go. And at the time, it was just being different. And of course, the tribe that I was hanging with, they just thought I was weird.
Yep.
And so I had to distance myself from them to a degree, because of where I was going was completely different, path to where they were going. And I didn't even know why I was on this path. I was just going there. You know what I mean? And I was happy, and I was happy to. I was just happy to be at home, because I knew that was going to set me up for the best possible training session the next morning. But to be out, training, drinking beer and stuff with these guys the night before was certainly not the best prep that I was going to have a training session the next morning.
Yep, and I can look back at my career. There's times where you mentioned there, it comes down to the little sacrifices. But it's not really the sacrifices, they're prices that you're going to pay to get the results you're looking for. Now, you had a passion with rowing, and you could see the potential you could have. So by having one night with the guys, or not going out with the guys, is the difference between them staying where they are and you going excelling 5-fold, 10-fold to being Olympic competitors. So, they're the sort of things.
Okay, so there's a lot of lessons we've taken out of our sit down, which I'm very grateful for, and hopefully you've got a lot out of it yourselves that are watching this. Pieces of advice: doing the fundamentals and making sure you're doing the basics all the time to turn up. And as are the principles of clean your room, doing the basics inside and outside in your personal life, which will take into your sport. So when we look at it, Gary, when you look at your life, you look back at it, what do you want to be remembered for? What is the final curtain when it comes down for you?
For me, it was just having a fun time. And the fun time was with my rowing, and that spilled over into my business life.
Yep.
And the deal is that someone said to me once, if you love what you're doing, you never work a day in your life. And I never treated my rowing as work, and I certainly didn't. I never thought about Concept2 being work either.
Yep.
I mean, I'm trained as an electrician, but you'd have to hit me with a stick to make me go and do that now, after my involvement with Concept2.
Yep. And I remember in our conversation previously, you talked about wealth. What was your take from wealth? What was your
also success? I read this a piece which just resonated with me, that success is about identifying the genius within us. So we all have a genius. It's a matter of identifying it and then maximising it and then passing it on. So which I thought was great, because it certainly success wasn't about the size of your checkbook or what car you drove or what suburb you live in. It was all about identifying this genius and then maximising it, utilising it for doing the best with it. Yeah. And we've all got a genius. It's just a matter of finding out what it is. And that's a huge thing in life.
Excellent. There you go, guys. The great Gary Reid, 1984 Olympic rower from New Zealand. Thank you very much for your time on the couch here, giving us your insights, but some learnings for all of us. So until next week, guys, game on.